Hello and welcome everybody to a very special video. Today we're going to talk about painting white without necessarily using white. Now there's a reason why a lot of people struggle with this, but let me give you a little bit of a backstory. I started painting in the early 90s and we didn't, let's say, have the same technology for paints. So a lot of whites were very thin, very translucent, and a little bit let's say splotchy. It could take a lot of skill and expertise to do white. And one thing that a lot of people in my local area where I was learning would do is they would add a tiny bit of a very neutral gray to the white. Now, this would throw it off from being a very vibrant white, as you can see with our test model here. It is a slight grayish tinge, very much like gray sear, which it's not, but it's a very close match to of my own personal mix, which is 2 parts white Stynol res to 1 part gray Stynol res. Mixed together, and there you go. Now, why did I do that? Well, it's a cold and rainy day, and, well, I needed to do something. But regardless, this is a trick that a lot of people used. Now, in context by itself, if you're going to paint a white scar, this trick is not going to help you. Now, it might give you a better base to paint white from, which I would suggest, but it will not make a super bright white. But when you put it into context, so let's move our sister over for a second. Whoop. Okay, well, we're just going to knock her over. You know, it's not the first time. And we're going to move over here. So with this marine here, let's get him a little bit better in there. Okay. As you can see, the whites are the lighter parts do look and read as white. Now, they won't be as vivid as if you did a, like, let's say, used white scar or titanium white or something like that. But depending on what you're looking for, you don't necessarily need to put yourself through extra stress. So, how did I achieve this in context? Well, first off, you're going to want to always use a slightly darker color to help contrast so that into comparison with your eyes, one thing will read as a lighter color, air quote, that gray reads as a white, and the darker color will look a little bit more vibrant in comparison, which can work very well. So let's say you want to do First Company ultramarines and you want that whitish trim, but you're like, I don't want to mess with white scar. This is a technique that you can use. So this is how it was achieved. Now, when I painted this guy, I was just using a neutral gray primer, or in this case, just Stynol Res gray primer. And I went over it with gray sear paint in a stippling motion. Now, I went over both areas, the entire shoulder pad, and all the other areas as well, but I stippled the gray sear on. I painted the other colors, then I washed the whole thing, and then I came back and I went over the flat areas with gray sear again to kind of clean it up and make the detail areas, as we'll point here, stand out a little bit more. Now, a newer technique that I have been using is using this. Now, I haven't been able to get gray sear in my local area because my store stopped carrying Games Workshop products, so I had to shift to something else, and I found this very nice gray from Army Paint, or Army Painter, their airline, and it's called Cadre Gray. It's a very nice little paint. It's already effectively pre-thinned, but it has really great coverage. Now, I don't normally pick up air paints just because they're air paints, but this was what was available, and it was the closest, let's just put those into comparison with one another, that I could find for what I was looking for. And this goes on very thin, very nice, and we're going to do a little bit of that right on the side just to demonstrate. You know, you're going to want to be careful. Now, when you're thinking about doing this, plan out when you want to go through a step like this. Don't go and do it and then go, oh crap, now I got to paint over it. Normally, I use these for high areas on the model or to make something pop a little bit more, but In this case, we're just going to, I'm going to grab the plasma pistol. Normally something I wouldn't do, but in the moment, and I'm just going to come in and I'm going to very much put this on. Now, it's a very thin paint, as you're going to see. It's going to have a little bit of a spotty coverage, but you're going to want to come in, give a few coats, but one thing you'll note is that it will brighten this model up. And even in context with the gray sear, you can see how much brighter it is. That will come down as it dries. But what we're using this for is effectively our base coat. Now, all right, everybody. So we did a little bit of coats of the Cadre Gray, the airbrush version, on this model. And I put her right behind this, well, recharging rack, which is a fairly dark black. And as you can see, it's not a perfect coat. I wasn't trying to go for perfect at the moment. I just wanted to show it off. The illusion of the kind of grayish hints that you would get from the gray sear style here has been made a little bit brighter in context with that black behind her. If I remove that, she still remains that. And we'll just go ahead and move this guy in next to her. Now, my main objective here is just to make clear that unless you are trying to get a stark, perfect white, you don't need to paint a white color and drive yourself nuts. You just have to work from some things that are going to be able to give that kind of sensation. Remember, you're going to be looking at these things from about 2 foot away. They're going to be on a table or a shelf or whatever, and it doesn't need to be perfect. Look, we're looking for imperfect perfection here. We want something that looks good, can be done, and is beginner friendly. Now, you can build up a white from this. You can use this technique of using something like a gray sear, with something like a Cadre Gray, and then add white on top of it in the flat areas, leaving this kind of grayish in the recesses. And especially since you can shade this and then apply the gray or the white scar or titanium white or whatever shade of white you're going for. But as you can see in this image, it does read as white, especially when you put different colors around. We've even gotten, let's just go to the base. We got the base a little bit. We didn't go for a perfect coverage because we're going to be putting another color over it anyways. But as you can see, it can be really easily done. Now the thing is, I'm going to remind you, always go with thin coats. It's going to be a little frustrating. Paint, put it over to the side, let it dry. If you have multiples, do a single coat on multiple units, let them dry, then come back and go work your way through them again. Remember, it's not a race, it's just about getting done. So hopefully this helped, and if you have any questions, let me know. And of course, I will see you in the next one, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.